By the time my mother announced to everyone in our distinguished family that I was an undeserved disgrace, I had already grown accustomed to her low expectations. Even so, hearing her pronounce me as nothing more than a failure, someone who would amount to absolutely nothing, left me speechless. She delivered this verdict with a poised sneer and a raised champagne flute in the luminous foyer of our estate, making sure all the important guests could see her disapproval. It was one of the most public censures imaginable, followed by her turning her back on me as though I had ceased to exist. Years later, on the afternoon my portfolio manager finally called her to discuss my new 8-figure account, she was holding that same style of champagne glass. The stem slipped through her fingers and shattered on the floor, expensive bubbles slipping across the marble she always presumed was hers. But the truth was, the marble, the surrounding land, and even the funds that maintained it had been in my name all along. Before we proceed, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if you're moved by Lily's story, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the special update we've planned for tomorrow. The moment my mother, Sabrina Bordeaux, formally declared me, Lily Bordeaux, the great family humiliation happened during what should have been a joyful occasion. My younger brother Gavin had just completed his MBA at Harvard. He finished top of his class, accepted honors with a proud grin, and was indeed stepping neatly into our father's shoes. My father, Philip Bordeaux, was a towering figure in high finance, known for guiding powerful investments that influenced global policy. Gavin was 26, brimming with promise, and our mother was all too eager to advertise his excellence. Meanwhile, I was 30, living in a modest apartment, and apparently a severe disappointment to the entire Bordeaux legacy. We were gathered at our ancestral estate in Greenwich, a resplendent manor spanning manicured acreage where staff members, nearly outnumbered invited guests. The place was a living testament to old wealth, intricately carved columns, marble floors shipped from Europe, and portraits of ancestors whose influence had once shaped political and business empires. Under a sprawling garden pavilion, wealthy investors, Ivy League admissions officers, and philanthropic dignitaries danced politely around one another, sipping vintage champagne. I was trying to position Gavin's trophies and awards for display, ensuring the vantage points were perfect. That's when I felt my mother's presence behind me, stirring the air as though the temperature had dropped a few degrees. Sabrina Bordeaux had an undeniable aura. Wherever she went, people stilled themselves, silently awaiting her critique, or her praise. "Lily?" she said softly, with just enough volume for my ears alone. "When you're finished with those tasks, I want you in the library." She glided away before I could respond. In our household, a directive from Sabrina was not up for negotiation. In our library, my grandfather's old reading room, which smelled of rare leather-bound tomes and polished mahogany, my mother stood by the fireplace. Her manicured fingertips rested on the mantel, dangerously close to a framed photograph of Gavin receiving some prestigious academic certificate. Her first words were, "The Pierces are here." She straightened the photograph of Gavin as she spoke. "Ronaldo Pierce's sister has asked about you, among others. People want to know what you've been doing with yourself since you let that online business of yours collapse." "How long has it been?" I replied. "It's been 4 years, Mother, and that business didn't fail. I sold it." "For pennies," she insisted. "You squandered your Stanford education on that silly website rather than accepting the banking. Job your father arranged, you ended up with, what again? A few meager gains you immediately frittered away?" I'd learned long ago not to interrupt her formal rebukes. She had a speech prepared, and the only way to keep it from stretching out forever was to nod and let her continue. "Your grandfather advised presidents, Lily," she declared, her voice dangerously calm. "Your father maneuvers sums that shape markets. Gavin at 26 has more offers than people twice his age. But what about you?" She paused, letting the tension build. 30 years old, living in a ragged apartment in Brooklyn, allegedly. Doing consulting. Who exactly is paying for those services? "I'm doing well," I said quietly. She glanced at her watch with theatrical impatience. "I've decided I won't make excuses for you anymore. Whenever people ask why you haven't fulfilled your potential, I'm simply going to speak. The truth. You are the family's disappointment. All the advantages in the world, wasted. You haven't inherited the Bordeaux drive or vision. I expected the words to cut deeper. Instead, they brought an odd sense of relief, like I'd been waiting for her to say it outright all along, to name the condemnation she'd implied for so long. Is that all? I asked, meeting her eyes. We both shared that same distinctive shade of Bordeaux blue, but it felt like the only trait we truly had in common. She blinked, clearly not anticipating my calm. Gavin's future is bright. He's a credit to this family. Meanwhile, you have shown no inclination to honor our legacy. Why do you persist on a path that only leads to mediocrity? My lips curved into a small, non-confrontational smile. We should go back to the party, Mother. People will notice our absence. Confusion flickered in her usually controlled gaze. She'd been expecting tears, some emotional protest, or perhaps even an argument. One more thing, Lily. The Pierce son Ronaldo is here tonight. His charitable foundation is quite influential. You might consider giving him your attention. A strategic marriage can at least restore some measure of dignity to your situation. I felt a surge of grim amusement. A marriage to compensate for my professional failures? Charming. It's time you contributed something, she shot back. Then she gripped my arm. I need you to be charming and discreet. Do not mention your contrarian viewpoints. The Bordeaux name is at stake here. We parted ways. She floated off to welcome a group of society mavens from Manhattan, while I retreated to a champagne fountain, observing the swirl of well-dressed financiers who all seemed to know exactly how to maneuver in this labyrinth of power. Gavin excused himself from a small cluster of admirers and crossed the lawn to join me. What's her verdict this time? He asked, offering me a fresh glass of champagne. I gave a mirthless laugh. Same as usual. I'm a colossal disappointment. Overshadowed by you, the shining star. Don't let it bother you, Gavin. I'm proud of everything you've achieved. He frowned. I just wish she would stop comparing us. Look, she has no idea what you're actually doing, does she? I sipped my champagne. Not a clue. Are you ever going to reveal it? He pressed, a rare curiosity in his gaze. My eyes drifted to where our mother now shared a practiced laugh with Ronaldo Pierce. She won't change her mind about me, no matter what I do. That's ridiculous, Gavin said. Anyone else in your position would be shouting from the rooftops. I shrugged. Why waste the energy on someone who's determined to misunderstand me? He studied me with that thoughtful, older sibling look, despite being younger by 4 years. You're the strangest person, Lily. Maybe so, I replied lightly. Now go mingle. I think I saw the Lamont's daughter making eyes at you. Gavin sighed, glancing at the cluster of important people who wanted his attention. He gave me a quick grin and slipped away. My eyes landed on my mother again. Sabrina was the consummate social orchestrator, presiding over the event as though choreographing every subtle alliance. She had just proclaimed me a disappointment, but she had no inkling that her carefully charted metrics of success were about to be shattered. If you believe Lily deserves respect for carving her own path, tap the like button or comment Lily to show your support. We want to cheer her on together. Building quietly in the shadows, 3 days after that garden party, just enough time for my mother's words to fade from sharp sting to a dull memory, I was perched in my absurd little apartment, as she'd described it. In truth, my place was a lofty condo in a repurposed factory building in Brooklyn's Dumbo neighborhood, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the East River and Manhattan skyline. I'd chosen every piece of furniture for both form and functionality, a stark contrast to the showy extravagance of the Bordeaux estate. My phone buzzed with a call from my trusted ally, Vanessa Choi, my chief investment strategist and one of a handful of individuals who knew the full picture of my secretive venture. Over the last 4 years, we had quietly amassed a portfolio under the banner of NovaQuest, an emerging fintech platform I'd founded with a small team of brilliant innovators. It's official, Vanessa said, skipping any greeting. The Singapore deal just cleared the final regulatory hurdle. Next week we can make the public announcement. And the valuation? I asked, grabbing a fountain pen to jot notes in my leather journal. Even higher than our initial estimates. Our ownership stake will be 62%. This effectively means the Bordeaux Group loses exclusive foothold in that region's financial infrastructure, she added, a note of wry amusement in her voice. I paused to look out my window. The Brooklyn Bridge spanned the water, merging my separate worlds, the home I'd chosen for myself and the Manhattan Empire I'd left behind. They've adapted to market shifts for generations, Vanessa. Maybe so, but not a revolution like this, she replied. Lily, when are you planning to tell them? This acquisition puts your net worth beyond the combined family fortune, and NovaQuest's technology is about to redirect how global transactions get done. I sighed. They'd never grasp why I created this, or what it's for. To them, success means rising in the ranks of old-line banks, controlling wealth behind gilded boardroom doors. So you'll just let them continue believing you're a struggling consultant living check to check? We both know it's more than that, I answered gently. NovaQuest will democratize access for millions who've been locked out of financial systems. Vanessa laughed softly. You're the most unusual multimillionaire I've ever met, and I'm pretty sure that label's about to become multi-billionaire. Technically, not until the final signatures go through, I pointed out. She pressed. Most people would want to gloat, especially after being publicly dubbed a disappointment. How can you not crave that satisfying moment? I chuckled. I grew out of that hunger years ago, Vanessa. It's enough to know we've built something meaningful. Yes, but you'll need security. Once the press announces your role, you'll lose the anonymity you've cultivated. She wasn't wrong. For 4 years, I had navigated behind the scenes, developing NovaQuest through layered holding companies. Only a few insiders knew I was the majority shareholder. My mother, father, and the entire Bordeaux circle had been utterly oblivious. In their eyes, I was an aimless 30-year-old who tinkered with consulting gigs. After the announcement, fine, I conceded. I'll consider extra measures, but first, I have to attend my father's 65th birthday celebration. Are you still going? Vanessa asked. Yes. My mother has been planning it for months. Gavin's achievements will be front and center, while my so-called failures remain a cautionary footnote. You never miss these gatherings, but you always blend in wearing something that screams underachiever. Please, Lily, no more Target sweaters to these black tie soirees. She pleaded. I laughed. Don't underestimate a cozy sweater. You own significant shares in multiple fashion brands. They'd die to dress you. I exhaled, feeling the contradiction. I prefer something understated. Let them see what they've always expected, the disappointment in modest attire. Vanessa's frustration was palpable. This strategy might once have been about independence, but isn't it getting suffocating? Her words struck me because I knew they contained truth. In the beginning, I'd hidden my progress so I could work freely, away from the Bordeaux name. Over time, secrecy had become a habit. The Singapore deal changes everything, I admitted. I won't be invisible for much longer, so let's not turn the birthday dinner into a spectacle. No dramatic reveal, no showy outfit. It's not about them. Then what is it about, Lily? She asked quietly. I took a moment to consider. Freedom, I said. I built NovaQuest on my own terms, away from paternalistic meddling. Once we announce, everyone will know. If my family notices, they notice. If they don't, that's their issue. That's unbelievably zen, Vanessa mused. I suppose it's also your hallmark, ignoring the usual path and forging your own. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from Gavin, reminding me of the party's schedule, black tie, 7 p.m. sharp, dinner speeches meticulously orchestrated by Mother. I smiled at his apologetic note, acknowledging he recognized the inequity between how I was treated versus how he was idolized. In less than a week, the world would learn who had quietly built an empire poised to reshape global finance. Not to Mia. Prove something, but because the vision demanded it. For generations, the Bordeaux name had been a passport to exclusive places. Yet the future, as I saw it, belonged to those who invented new systems. I was about to show them the key I'd been forging. NovaQuest's official offices took up the top 3 floors of a converted industrial building in Chelsea. I had insisted on a culture of open collaboration, free from rigid hierarchies. It was far from Midtown's old money towers, reflecting my desire to build something on a fresh foundation. The morning before my father's party, I arrived for our pre-announcement briefing with my core leadership team. Everyone recognized I was the founder and CEO, but I walked in wearing jeans and a jacket, receiving just a quick nod from the front desk security. Perfectly how I liked it. Inside, Vanessa was waiting along with our CTO, Emilio Delgado, our head of global markets, Tara Williamson, and the others whose brilliance had brought NovaQuest to life. Tara wasted no time. Singapore regulators finalized everything at 3 this morning. We can announce Monday. Financial press outlets have picked up chatter about a big disruption coming. They just don't know it's you. Emilio flashed a grin. Bloomberg assigned several reporters to track down the source of the rumored takeover and new platform. They haven't connected the puzzle to Lily Bordeaux. The SEC filings on Monday will reveal my controlling interest, I said, studying the timeline. Then the entire story becomes public. Are we ready on messaging? Vanessa confirmed, yes, we'll emphasize the tech and the expanded financial access, not your personal background. Of course, the press will be captivated by your family's legacy. I took a measured breath. The story that matters is how this platform democratizes finance. We aren't just dethroning old systems, we're expanding possibilities. I won't let them spin it into a personal feud with my parents. The team exchanged uncertain glances, but ultimately nodded. They knew how I operated by now. After the briefing wrapped, they filed out, leaving Vanessa behind. She studied me with eyes that saw beyond the professional veneer. Tomorrow night, you'll be at that Bordeaux estate hearing your mother highlight Gavin's triumphs. Knowing you're about to make their entire business model obsolete, doesn't that evoke some satisfaction? I appreciate the freedom they gave me by dismissing me, I said gently. When no one expects anything, you have room to experiment. Vanessa sighed. You're so pragmatic about it, yet it's exactly why we're at the brink of unveiling an enormous breakthrough. She was right. The journey to unshackle myself from external validation was the real triumph. NovaQuest was the byproduct of that liberation. I don't need to gloat, I said. I simply need to carry this vision forward. Your greatest success is overcoming the need for your family's approval, she observed. That gave you the mental space to innovate like this. Perhaps, I allowed. As for what I'm wearing, I haven't decided. Maybe something that doesn't hide me entirely, but also doesn't overshadow my father's celebration. Vanessa offered a friendly smile. Tomorrow is the last time your family dynamic will function under old assumptions. Everything changes once the Monday announcement hits. I stared out at the city skyline, imagining the swirl of urgent memos that would soon consume traditional institutions. We'll see how they respond. For now, I'll keep my presence simple at the birthday dinner. The birthday bash went Saturday. Evening arrived. It was one of those perfect autumn nights in Greenwich. Crisp air, just enough warmth in the breeze. I pulled up to the Bordeaux estate in a sleek but unremarkable car, stepping onto the grand driveway with an inexplicable sense of calm rather than my usual wariness. I had followed Vanessa's advice partly by avoiding my typical bland choices. Instead, I wore a tailored black dress from a budding designer, a label I had quietly funded. With it, I wore a single heirloom, my grandmother's antique sapphire pendant. It was, ironically, one of the few Bordeaux items I actually cherished. As I climbed the steps, I spotted Gavin waiting near the door, looking as polished as ever. You're early, he said, hugging me. And you look different. Different how? I teased. Centered, he replied. Like you're no longer trying to be invisible. I laughed softly. I guess I got tired of that routine. He escorted me in, warning, Mother has put you between Ronaldo Pierce and Senator Lawson's son in hopes of a potential beneficial match. Try to keep your eyes open. We reached the grand foyer, all limestone floors and twinkling chandeliers. We paused, hearing the hum of chatter and the faint sound of music from the main ballroom. Gavin dropped his voice. You know I never believed you were a failure, right? I smiled. Of course. Don't worry about me. Tonight's about Dad. We were interrupted by the approach of our mother, Sabrina, who who wore a regal gown and the Bordeaux family diamonds. She examined me with the quick precision of someone evaluating a new acquisition. "Lily, you're not wearing your usual attire," I responded evenly. "It's a new dress I thought suitable for Father's celebration." She gave a curt nod. "It's acceptable. The Pierces arrived 10 minutes ago. Ronaldo specifically asked if you'd be joining us soon. Try not to keep him waiting." Before I could respond, my father appeared. Philip Bordeaux, tall and silver-haired, emanating the dignity of a man who'd guided major financial institutions for decades. He pulled me into a warm embrace. "Good to see you, Lily. Right on time, as always." My father had always tried to shield me from some of my mother's harsh judgments, rewriting history to make me appear more reliable than Sabrina would allow. "Happy birthday," I said with genuine affection. He stepped back to assess me. "You look wonderful. There's something in you tonight that's changed." "Maybe it's simply happiness to be here," I said, refusing to elaborate on how else I'd changed. My mother, not missing a beat, interjected, "Or maybe she's finally realizing the opportunity offered by the Pierce family. Reynaldo is in a position to direct a great deal of philanthropic capital that could partner with us if Lily shows some interest." Father masked a slight eye roll, then offered each of us an arm. "Shall we greet our guests, ladies?" We walked into the main salon, which was packed with at least 100 prominent names in finance, politics, and high society. They were all here to honor my father's decades of success. The clinking of crystal, gentle classical music, and polished conversation set the stage for a meticulously planned evening. This was a world I recognized intimately, though I'd become an outsider by choice. Tonight, I would walk through it one last time under my family's illusions. Conversations and subtext dinner was announced in a formal tone, and we proceeded into a grand dining hall, replete with elaborate centerpieces and shimmering candelabras. The seating chart was no accident. I was indeed next to Ronaldo Pierce and Senator Lawson's son. Both men greeted me politely, though I felt the mild condescension in their voices, as though they were indulging the wayward daughter of the Bordeaux clan. "Your mother says you do consulting," Reynaldo said, swirling his wine. "Financial. Technology, perhaps." "Among other things," I answered lightly. He inclined his head, feigning interest. "That's an intriguing field. The Pierce Foundation is actually evaluating potential investments in fintech. Could be a strategic growth area." I simply nodded, imagining his reaction in about 36 hours, when Monday's official announcements would shatter his illusions. "If you'd like an overview of current trends, I'd be happy to share. But the transformative potential of new technology lies in the details." He appeared relieved I didn't dive too deep. "Certainly, although eventually these startups require support from established institutions to truly scale." The irony was stark. NovaQuest's platform was designed to circumvent those very gatekeepers. I just smiled. From across the table, I could sense my mother's relief that I was playing the part assigned to me, pleasant, docile, engaged in harmless conversation. She had no notion that behind my noncommittal remarks stood the creation of a system powerful enough to unseat everything the Bordeaux name had championed. When dinner ended, the speeches began. Gavin, as the family's proud success story, offered a sparkling tribute to our father, praising his innovations and philanthropic spirit. The crowd clapped appreciatively, wholly agreeing with Gavin's portrayal. After all, they benefited from the same system Philip had wielded for so long. Then came my 2 minutes. My mother had evidently allocated a minimal speaking slot to avoid embarrassing the family with my ramblings. Standing at the microphone, I surprised them with quiet composure. "My father," I said, letting my voice resonate gently through the hush, "demonstrated that true leadership isn't about clinging to what's proven, but daring to explore new possibilities that serve everyone, not just the privileged. Many of you know Philip Bordeaux as a master of traditional finance. I've known him as a man who embraced creative thinking and championed those who took risks, even if he didn't fully understand them." I paused, scanning the room. I raise my glass to my father, for showing me that lasting impact is built by questioning assumptions, not just enforcing them. A ripple of confusion crossed my mother's face. This was not the standard flattery she had expected. My father, however, wore a faint smile, possibly recognizing the kernel of truth in my words. The applause was polite, but slightly puzzled, as some of the guests sensed an undercurrent that ran against typical Bordeaux tributes. Gavin flashed me an encouraging nod. My mother looked faintly displeased, as though uncertain how to interpret my remarks. Returning to my seat, Ronaldo leaned in. "That was interesting," he said slowly. "It almost sounded revolutionary." I tilted my head. "Everyone's work has a transformative quality, in scale if not in name." He let out a short laugh. "Indeed. Perhaps you're more ambitious than you appear." "Perceptions often fall behind reality," I replied, letting the conversation drift on. The quiet. Before the revelation. Eventually, we moved to the ballroom, where an orchestra played waltzes for the older crowd and jazz standards for the younger set. Champagne continued to flow as financiers huddled in corners discussing the next big trends or philanthropic initiatives, forging alliances behind cordial smiles. I lingered at the edge of the room, watching the dance of wealth and influence, recognizing how each handshake represented a carefully orchestrated step towards securing or expanding fortune. My mother circulated effortlessly, ensuring every introduction served a purpose in her grand plan. Gavin navigated a cluster of admirers, trying to keep them entertained without losing his easy charm. My father, slipping momentarily free from his well-wishers, sidled up to me. "Quite the speech, Lily," he said quietly. "I assume it was a compliment?" "Both a compliment and a reminder," I said, swirling the remains of my champagne. "You taught me that greatness can come from challenging accepted norms." He regarded me thoughtfully. "Your mother thinks I worry too much about you, but I'm more curious than concerned. Are you happy with this consulting path you've chosen?" I met his steady gaze. "I'm fulfilled far beyond what I expected," he pressed gently. "I wish you'd tell me more about it, not because I doubt you, but because I'd like to understand." Before I could answer, my mother descended upon us, having sensed my father's conversation had gone on too long. She whisked him away, to speak with a Japanese delegation interested in a new expansion. She gave me a pointed look. "Ronaldo's father, Charles Pierce, is seeking you. Don't waste the opportunity." I suppressed a grin, stepping onto a terrace for some fresh air instead. The manicured gardens glimmered in the estate's floodlights, each blade of grass carefully trimmed, each hedge sculpted. Everything was perfectly in place, exactly as my mother demanded. I leaned against a stone railing, feeling the crisp breeze on my face. Gavin appeared a moment later. "Mother's scribbling wedding invites in her mind," he said wryly. "So I can't blame you for hiding out here." I laughed softly. "I've survived her attempts at strategic matchmaking before," he frowned. "You seem less bothered by everything tonight. Usually these events weigh heavily on you." "I found a sort of peace," I explained. "When you accept that someone else's standard of success doesn't have to be your own, it's liberating." Gavin loosened his tie. "For all her criticisms, you're the only one of us who seems content. Father's always dealing with the next big crisis. Mother's worrying about appearances, and I'm juggling expectations. But somehow you seem free." "That's because I chose a path that resonates with me," I said simply. He contemplated the illuminated ballroom where socialites glided in sparkling gowns. "Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just quit all this, walked away," gave a supportive nod. "The Bordeaux name would survive it, trust me." He responded bitterly. "Not if you ask Mother. She believes our fortunes hang on these precise roles we perform. And yet, here I am, living proof that you can deviate from the script and the world doesn't end," I said. Gavin exhaled. "I overheard some talk about an unknown fintech about to disrupt big banking. Rumor is an announcement drops Monday. Suppose that's you." "Market rumors swirl like wildfire," I said, remaining composed. He arched an eyebrow, studying me. "You're a puzzle, Lily, but I suspect the puzzle will be solved soon." One last evening of disguise, I headed back inside, intercepted by Charles Pierce, Ronaldo's father. He greeted me with a paternalistic grin. "So, Lily, I'm told you have some interest in financial technology. An intriguing hobby, but you should be cautious about fancy illusions. Our world depends on the stability built by families like ours." I gave him a neutral smile. "Stability and progress aren't mutually exclusive." He waved that off. "Don't be naive. We've witnessed many so-called revolutions come and go." I pictured how differently he would speak to me on Tuesday, once NovaQuest's role became the centerpiece of every major business headline. "We'll see how the industry adapts to genuine innovation," I replied. He gave a condescending chuckle. "Spoken like someone who doesn't know real markets. No offense intended." "None taken," I said, stepping away. My mother caught my eye, frustration evident in her glance. She believed I'd fumbled an essential opportunity by not ingratiating myself to the Pierces. If only she realized I was shaping the very foundation they stood upon. As the evening drew to a close, my father found me again, this time with a modestly wrapped gift. He handed it to me, saying, "Thought you might appreciate this more than anything else we usually give." Inside, I discovered a beautifully crafted compass with a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote etched into the casing: "Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." I stared at it, touched more deeply than I wanted to admit. "I may not fully grasp what you're doing," my father said quietly, "but I've always admired your determination to choose your own course." I closed my fingers around the compass. "Thank you, Dad." He offered a subtle nod. "Whatever you're building, I hope it matters to you. That's the real success in the end." After he returned to my mother, I lingered in the foyer, turning the compass over in my hand, feeling the profound weight of the moment. For so long, the Bordeaux name had defined success in a rigid way. Yet here was my father, acknowledging my independence might hold merit. It was a flicker of hope that perhaps even established traditions could evolve. Before leaving, my mother cornered me one last time. "I'm relieved you didn't embarrass us tonight, but you could show more initiative toward Ronaldo. We need strong alliances." I regarded her with unexpected sympathy. "Maybe there's more than one way to secure a future, Mother." She pursed her lips. "Philosophy won't protect you from reality." I gave her a gentle smile. "I'm more secure than you imagine. But if you want specifics, you'll find out soon enough." She raised an eyebrow, unsettled by my self-assured tone. "You're different tonight." "Because I no longer need your approval," I said softly, though not unkindly. She opened her mouth to retort, but the words never came. Unsure how to parse that revelation, she merely watched me step outside into the crisp night. That final glimpse of the grand, light-washed estate behind me felt like a closing chapter on a certain mode of existence. The day of reckoning Sunday passed quietly, a deceptive calm. Vanessa and I exchanged last-minute calls, finalizing press releases. Everything was in place for Monday's 9 a.m. announcement that NovaQuest had completed a multi-billion-dollar acquisition in Singapore, thereby solidifying our ability to operate a next-generation fintech platform on a global scale. Monday dawned bright and clear. I dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, discreet pearl earrings, and my grandmother's pendant. The press kits would go out at 7:30 a.m., the official statements at 8 a.m., and I would ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange at 9:30 a.m. That single gesture would inform the world that Lily Bordeaux, the so-called incompetent daughter, was behind a seismic shift in finance. At exactly 8 a.m., the press release flooded every major financial institution, including the Bordeaux Group. I pictured the memo landing on my father's desk, watched by whatever associates were present. NovaQuest Technologies, founded by Lily Bordeaux, controlling interest revealed, valuation in the tens of billions, technology poised to disintermediate old guard banking. Within minutes, the entire industry would be scrambling to process the magnitude. At 8:17 a.m., my phone rang. Caller ID, my father's direct line. "Good morning, Dad," I answered calmly. His voice was measured. "NovaQuest Technologies? You're behind it?" "Yes," I said simply. The Singapore acquisition that's been rattling markets? The cross-border platform overshadowing traditional gatekeepers? That's yours? He sounded more intrigued than outraged. That's correct, I admitted. I've assembled an exceptional team. Silence, then a thoughtful exhale. Why didn't you tell me, Lily? All these years, your mother and I believed you were lost, I explained softly. I had to build NovaQuest independently. It had to stand on its own merits, without the distortion of the Bordeaux influence. And being underestimated gave me breathing room. He digested that. The concept of disintermediation is more than technological. It's an ideological challenge. Are you sure these systems can deliver on what they promise? We've tested for 18 months in parallel. With legacy institutions, the results speak for themselves. Institutions will have to adapt, including the Bordeaux Group. He paused again. Your mother will find this difficult. I let out a quiet laugh. She's built her world around a single definition of success. This changes the framework. My father mustered a half chuckle. I'm uncertain how to respond. As your father, I'm extraordinarily proud. As the head of a traditional banking family, I'm more than a little concerned. And personally, I'm rethinking everything I assumed about our industry. I appreciate that complexity, I said. It's exactly the conversation we need. He paused. One last question. Are you happy? Not wealthy, not influential, truly happy with what you've created? Yes, I answered, feeling emotion rise in my throat. It's given me a purpose that goes beyond personal gain. Then I'm proud of you, Lily, he said quietly. Not for the valuation, but for forging your own meaning. The background? Noise escalated, presumably my mother entering his office. I suspect your mother wants this phone. Talk soon. We ended the call, and that subtle sense of alignment between father and daughter lifted the burden of secrecy I'd carried for years. I barely had time to breathe before the phone rang again. Lily, the entire father's office looks like a war room. Gavin's voice sounded half in awe, half amused. Mother's, well, beside herself doesn't quite cover it. She's convinced there's a mistake, that it can't possibly be you. I laughed. Sounds right. She's heading to that little midtown office you used as a front. Brace yourself, he warned, but he was also proud. I can't believe you built something so massive on your own. You'd be surprised what can grow when no one is watching, I teased. He inhaled. You sure you won't let me come? Aboard? I might be rethinking everything. I'd love you to consider it if it's a genuine calling. But we can talk soon, after the dust settles. He hung up, leaving me with a warm sense of hope. Then, sure enough, my mother's call came. Sabrina Bordeaux's voice was tight. Lily, we have a bizarre situation here. There's a new fintech. With your name listed as founder, worth an outrageous figure. I'm on my way to confirm it's a hoax before it damages the family reputation. There's no hoax, Mother, I said gently. NovaQuest is my company, has been for 4 years, since I sold that failed site you ridiculed. She was silent, likely processing the notion that her so-called disappointment had orchestrated a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. That's not possible, she whispered. You've been living in that shabby apartment, clinging to menial consulting assignments, I explained calmly. I own the apartment in Dumbo, which is hardly shabby, and I've been developing NovaQuest's technology. The valuation is real, but it's not what matters. The mission does. Her voice dropped. Why didn't you tell us? I exhaled. Because NovaQuest needed to grow on its own terms, not as a Bordeaux spin-off. For a moment, I heard only the soft hiss of her breath over the phone. The official announcement is at 9? Yes, along with a bell-ringing ceremony at the stock exchange. She let out a flustered noise. We should be there. Show support as a family. This is about NovaQuest, not the Bordeaux name, I clarified. We're not using it for a PR angle. It stands on its own, just as it always has. A long pause, then a reluctant admission. I may have made assumptions about your path that were inaccurate. Perspectives change when new information emerges, I offered, giving her a graceful exit. I have to go now. The opening bell is in less than half an hour. She managed a subdued goodbye, and I set the phone down, my chest feeling light and unburdened. All these years, the tension between us had revolved around her belief that I was worthless to the family name. The truth was out. I no longer had to tiptoe around illusions. Ringing the bell, I arrived at the New York Stock Exchange with minutes to spare, Vanessa at my side. The trading floor was electric. Journalists and camera crews swarmed, eager to catch a glimpse of this mysterious figure who had upended centuries-old structures with an innovative platform. I stepped onto the balcony above the bustling traders, heart calm. Nervous? Vanessa asked softly. Focused, I corrected. This isn't about a personal vendetta. It's about unveiling a future that helps more people access financial systems. At exactly 9:30, I pressed the button that sent the opening bell's clang reverberating through the exchange. Cameras flashed. Reporters angled their microphones at me. In that resonant moment, Lily Bordeaux ceased to be the unknown disappointment. The world saw me as the force behind NovaQuest, which threatened to permanently reshape global banking. The interviews that followed were a whirlwind. CNBC anchors grilling me on disruption, Bloomberg analysts asking about integration with existing banks, major newspapers wanting quotes on the moral implications of democratizing finance. I answered calmly, emphasizing that NovaQuest didn't aim to obliterate old structures, but to expand them in ways that included those previously excluded. We're not tearing down everything that came before, I told a CNBC reporter. We're building on strong foundations, introducing new doors where walls once stood. By midday, stocks in traditional banks stabilized, while tech soared. The Bordeaux Group recovered some losses after issuing a statement praising NovaQuest's breakthrough. My father's quote expressed eagerness to adapt, highlighting the agility he'd always possessed. When I returned to our Chelsea office that afternoon, my team erupted in cheers. The workspace buzzed with celebratory excitement, not just for the monstrous valuation, but for the validation of our mission. Emilio, our CTO, approached with a framed keepsake. The original whiteboard sketch we had made 4 years ago, capturing the early vision for NovaQuest. From idea to reality, he said, handing it over. You led us here, Lily, I smiled. This belongs to all of us, everyone who believed in a different model of finance. Vanessa read off the headlines from her tablet. They're calling it the moment that redefined banking. Others brand it Bordeaux's breakaway. But the positive spin is that we're not just toppling systems, we're innovating them. Exactly, I said. Sustainability comes from evolution, not destruction. That's been our belief all along. She nodded. One more thing. Your mother has called 17 times. We told her you'd phone back after hours. I let out a soft laugh. That's fine. Let her adapt at her own pace. Then my gaze flicked to the conference room. My brother's here? Vanessa smiled. He arrived about half an hour ago. Said he wanted to see NovaQuest in action, rather than read about it in a press release. Stepping away from the celebratory team, I entered the glass-walled conference room, finding Gavin gazing out at the cityscape, a mixture of awe and respect etched onto his features. He turned when he heard me, meeting my eyes with a whole new understanding. If you appreciated Lily's journey from dismissed daughter to financial pioneer, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We'll have more insightful stories and empowering tales coming your way. Don't miss out.